You know, Brian gets asked all the time, what hearing protection does your crew use? The answer, IsoTunes. IsoTunes are the only brand that we found that offers great hearing protection, all-day comfort, and extended battery life to get through the day. Now through the 16th of June, save 20% on their 4 most popular models using the code BRIANS20 at checkout. Treat your hearing safety seriously. Invest in some good quality hearing protection before this 20% off sale from IsoTunes ends June 16th. If you get Brian's email newsletter, check your inbox for details, and we've also provided a link in the podcast description.
You're now listening to the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast. Straightforward, no-nonsense business advice. Completely unfiltered. Grow your business. Grow your life. Now, here's your host, Brian Fullerton.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast. It is your host, Brian Fullerton, here hanging with you guys, and good morning. Well, what I wanted to do is talk about just a quick topic for you guys. We'll keep it a light and airy Friday show. Or maybe not. Maybe we'll go thick in the paint. We'll do a little layup here. We'll give you guys some topics to think about for the weekend, and maybe blow your mind, warp your mind. I told Liz, I said, this could be a short and sweet podcast episode, or it could be just dropping nuggets and giving them the sauce. And knowing my wife, she said, give them the sauce, honey. If anybody can teach the world how to be successful, it's you. Just having fun. All right. Anyway, hey, shout out to all you guys. Hopefully you're having a good week. Real time today, Friday. If all goes well on the schedule, we should be doing a 5-yard mulch job, a new commercial cleanup for $550, and we should be doing a couple hour landscape bed renovation and weed pulling and cleanup. That's another $300-400 in the book. So I think it was like $600, $550, and probably about $200-300 when it's all said and done. That'll take us to about 11 a.m. A little half day for the guys, and then 2.5-day weekend, which is always great. Normally we have Fridays off, but we do landscaping on Friday and Saturdays. No big mulch jobs, just a little 5-yarder, this commercial site cleanup, which will now be a new bi-weekly commercial site for a vacant property. And then one of our commercial sites that we do snow only asked if we can do some bed enhancements. And heck yeah, we can. So that's an extra, I don't know, whatever I just said. 6, 5, and 3 is $1,400 on the books. Not too bad. And that'll actually be some pretty decent margin work for the day. So that's what we're doing on Friday. What I want to talk about for just a couple minutes here, and this is, man, it's almost like you want to talk about something, but you want to talk about something else, but I really don't want to talk about something else just yet because it's still a little early, still a little bit premature. So we'll see if I spill the beans or what we get into. But I was talking about Liz about something just the other day, and she actually suggested this topic for the podcast. So if you get anything out of this podcast episode today, thank my wife. If you think it's a heap of garbage, blame me. That's fair. But we were talking about how, and we learned this from Mark Bradley. I don't know if this was in person or if this was when we got to go to visit the Element headquarters in January for a little company tour. That was super awesome. We got to do that with the Almonds. Maybe I heard that up there. But and you guys have heard this, I'm sure, before, or thought this before. But Mark talked about, and maybe one of us asked, we talked about company growth and when do you make investments into the business? How do you build a more successful company? Or how do you deal with people? Or when do you know certain things to do? And, there's a lot of answers there, of course, and it was a huge conversation. But Mark had spent a little bit of time talking about decision-making being emotional or rational. And holy cow, if there's a topic that you can talk about for probably hours, if not days on end, it is the topic of making emotional decisions or rational decisions. And I'm not going to come at it from, some business sage advice. I'm not going to come at it from some marriage guidance counselor kind of deal or coach. I'm not going to come at it from some attorney or, some other, expert in that regard. I'm going to come at you just as a business owner and as a friend and somebody who's trying to win at life. And, it's interesting, the conversation about making emotional decision making or rational decision making. And I guarantee you, and I can promise you and tell you that I have done both. I have made emotional, brash, rash, fly by the seat of your pants type decision making. And I've made very, very intelligent, thoughtful, calculated decision making in my life as well on multitude of topics and genres and different things, right? From relational to fitness to financial to emotional to whatever, right? All of the above. And, one thing I wanted to talk about and specifically relate this to, and I'll just give you guys a little bit of the sauce if you guys want, a little bit inside baseball, is right now, Liz and I are having some really, really good conversations about rebranding Brian's Lawn Maintenance. And it's not here to be ground shaking, earth shattering kind of conversation. It's not going to be like that. It should actually be just a smooth little transition. It's more of a refresh with what we're doing. But this has generated and dug up, as you guys can imagine, a lot of dialogue, a lot of emotion, a lot of feelings, a lot of thoughts, a lot of what are we doing here? What do we want to do here? Where do we want to go? And of course, you can break this topic down, like I said, for hours on end about how we view and look at certain things. But it really has challenged us in a decision-making, what's the next best move, what would you call it, manner or fashion, right? With how we're looking at making progress in our life. Okay, a lot of words just to say, are we emotionally tied to this thing or are we rationally tied to this thing, the business or your decision or your outcome, right? Depending on the topic. And, Liz and I would try to imagine, or I hope, that we're very rational thinking creatures. We're very rational people. I think we're very slow sometimes, calculated. We try to be in a lot of what we do and how we approach things. And I don't know if that comes with an age thing, a wisdom thing, an experience thing. The older you get, the more things roll off your back, or you realize like the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. Well, we can do this or we could do that. And then you'll go, yeah, I don't really care. I don't have the energy for that, or I don't really care about the outcome, or, some guy's got a Ferrari and you don't, and you're like, yeah, I don't care. At 19, 20, you're like, man, I want a Ferrari. At 25, 30, 35, you go, yeah, care less. And then when you're 50, you're like, I don't care at all. So it's like an element of that possibly, right? But to relate to maybe some of the marketing and rebranding stuff that we're looking at doing with Brian's Lawn Maintenance, it's like really pulling some of these emotional strings where Liz and I, see a different color, or a different font, or a different logo, or a different style of the name of the brand, right? And you start going, man, like I don't really know if I like that, right? I don't know if I really like the way that looks, or how I feel about that. And you start using, one thing I'll tell you guys, if you go through life, listen to what people say, things like, well, I think, I feel, I believe, right? Like those are different indicators when you're talking to somebody. Hey, what do you think about this new car purchase? What do you guys think? Well, most people aren't thinking, so it's not usually the best qualifying question. Hey, do you believe that you can make this work? Yeah, I believe I can make this new car work. Yeah, okay. So that kind of changes the whole different conversation, right? Hey, what do you feel about this new car? How does it make you feel? Man, I love this red Mustang. It looks cool. It makes me feel powerful. And I got an awesome, V8 Mustang. It's red. It's convertible. Like, yeah, it looks awesome. Yeah, man, it's really going to turn heads. That's a super cool looking car. I feel like this is an amazing looking car. Yeah, I feel the same way. Thought process wise, they need to have a $750 a month car payment, for a Mustang. Yeah, probably not. That's the rational. The emotional, they're like, man, this car looks sweet. Hold on, man, hit that V8. Okay, now put it in the sport mode. Whoa, really hear those that engine purr and those revs roar, right? And it's just a different approach when you start getting somebody to go from thinking to feeling. And I'm sure there's more here, but another one is believing, right? Like I believe. And the fundamentalist, right? The belief into something, the heart of a volunteer, right? There's people that buy in at a different level when you start going from thinking to feeling to believing, right? There's movement there. And this is a conversation that Liz and I are having right now as we go through this whole process. And I'll be honest with you guys, it's challenging. It's difficult. It's challenging norms. We're using a lot of mixed words like think, feel, and believe. And that always creates a spool of emotions, a tornado of emotions. And it's just got me really doing some self-evaluating about my life, my company, my business. Nothing grand, nothing super under the radar or under the microscope. It's not like we're changing everything.
Exmark mowers are known for their signature cut quality, legendary dependability, and an operator experience unlike any other. Because if something's worth doing, it's worth doing right. Don't miss out on limited time savings going on now at your local dealer.
But it does, warrant a question or beg some observation as we all go through life. And maybe the next couple of decisions you make, like, do you have a handle on your feelings and your emotions? Are the decisions you're making based on thoughts and numbers and data or financials? Or is it a belief system thing where, hey, it's 80%, believing you're making the right decision, 20% luck? I feel like I'm about to sing a Fort Minor song here, 80% luck, 20% skill, whatever it is, right? 50% luck. But these are the kind of conversations we can sometimes have internally, right? It's a little bit of this like mental mind, what. And Liz and I are like subject to it just as much as I would imagine you guys are, right? You for example, we're looking at our branding and we're like, man, I don't know if that gives the right feel or emotion, right? Like we're struggling right now to go from we're not struggling, but our struggle that we're crossing and navigating, right, is how to go from a small family-owned business, keep those elements and those legacy elements of who we are and what we do, community, family-owned, 17 years, residential focus, to the other end of the spectrum is your perfect cuts, your bright views, your larger companies. And I say this with all love and respect, but the corporate accounts, the corporate companies, the tech companies, the companies that you don't really know who's running them, you don't know who owns them, you don't really care. You got a mall or a strip mall or a commercial apartment building, I should say. You don't really care if it's Brian Fullerton taking care of your lawn. You just want a company to take care of it. Cut the grass short, plow the snow, life goes on, right? And so these are our next conversation as we go from hopefully somewhere in the middle, right? Keeping some legacy elements of being a small family-owned business, somebody who cares, we have a heart, we have a soul, to also being a larger site management company doing your lawn and snow, and you don't really care who does it. Now, we want to be a regional player, right? We were just talking about this on our Link Live the other day. Somebody was asking Lucas, a friend of mine and buddy and guy part of the group, he said, hey, how do you plan to get to your higher revenue goals and expand your business, so on and so forth? And we were talking and breaking all this down on our last weekly live just 2 days ago. And I said, we're somewhere between, we want to be a soulless, shellless kind of a company, that you just reach out to. And I'm not saying that's Perfect Cut or Brightview. I'm just giving a high level example. I said, but we're also wanting to make sure that we're still, a pillar in the community. People know us. There's good word of mouth. We can attract great talent from referrals. When you call, you do know the people that work at that company. We want to be a small town company in a large market, right? You guys know what I'm saying. So like we're trying to be somewhere in between. And so that basically brings up all these conversations of, are we making rational decisions or emotional decisions? Well, I'm emotionally invested in the colors, or I'm emotionally invested in the logo, or I'm emotionally invested in the verbiage or the name. Versus, is that a rational decision? Like, does anybody rationally care what color the trucks are? Rationally, how the logo works? Rationally, who's the face of the company? Right? And so it's like, it's a very fun exercise. It's a very, I'll be honest with you, exhausting and challenging exercise. And Liz and I stemmed it back to the conversation where Mark Bradley talked about this back at the LMN invite that we had up in Toronto. Because somebody asked, like, how do you make decisions? And Mark said, well, is it like an emotional decision? Like, sure, that could be okay. Is it a rational decision? Like, hey, we want to buy a new Toro Dingo or a new truck or a new skid steer. And we've ran the numbers, quote unquote, and it makes sense from a rational thought process. Hey, having a yard machine, a loader that's, $1,800 a month, it makes sense to save on delivery fees, us loading up our own bulk material, us having a small yard, being able to have flexibility loading and unloading trucks, so on and so forth. I remember talking to Pat Murray and Ken Deemer at Local Roots, and they had a couple major decisions for the company as they continue to grow. And actually, one was a shop loader. They're like, we don't know if this makes sense or not, but let's run the numbers. And they ran the numbers, and I forget what it was, but it was saving them like 6 figures a year by having a shop loading machine just based on previous years' sales and trends and everything that they had accomplished. And it was a very rational decision. But if you said, hey, can we afford a loader? Well, I don't know if I feel like we can, or I don't feel like we can, or I don't believe we can. Well, are you going to let the feeling or the belief trump the rational? Right? And so it's an interesting conversation. I'm not here to get a gotcha on anything or anybody. I'm just telling you guys where I'm at. It's so wild of a conversation because people ask me questions all the time and I go, well, I want to quit my job. I feel like I can make this thing work. I believe I can make this thing work. I'm like, well, let's look at the numbers. Well, I'm drowning in debt. We're 3 months behind on rent. None of my mowers are paid for and I've got no money in the bank. Well, I understand you feel like you could go full time and you believe that you'll make this thing the next $1 million, perfect cut type business or whatever, multi-million-dollar outfit. But I'm struggling rationally to understand how you're paying your bills next week if you quit your job at Costco making $22 an hour. As much as you hate it and you think it's toxic, I just don't think we're there yet. Sorry. You're not going to get my blessing. You're going to have to work another 3 to 6 months or for another season, put some things together. And you can then maybe make sure that you can get that boat closer to the dock, quote unquote, as we call it. And you can have that decision, that conversation next year. Right. And so I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer. I'm sure it's a balance. So there's an achievable balance, hopefully, between balancing the rational, the emotional, and, maybe the belief or maybe other, topics like this. But it's an interesting one, isn't it? And maybe it's a little bit of an introspective podcast, but this is just something that next time you have a fight with your spouse, is it? Maybe not you guys, but live with myself. Is this a rational conversation? Is this an emotional conversation? It's probably not a belief one, Well, somebody believes they're right. Somebody believes that the other person's wrong. I'm sure that's the case. I don't want to get myself in trouble here, but is it something where you want me to listen, something you want me to fix, something you want me to just let you be ridiculous about? That's how Liz and I approach our conversations. That's the marriage coaching we got. But here's the bottom line. Is that person right or wrong? I don't know. Well, you never do this and this is always that and blah, blah, blah. Hey, I understand emotionally you feel that way, but practically speaking, rationally thinking, I actually did that one time and you just happened to stub your toe 2 minutes before I walked in the door with dirty shoes and I mucked up your carpet. Now you're all pissed off at me. Actually, it was you're being irrational. It's an emotional high that you're on, toxic high that you're on because you stubbed your toe. I'm not your problem. I say that to Liz once in a while, right? Or vice versa, okay? But it's the same thing. Well, we want to buy this or invest in that. Sometimes people ask me, well, how do you feel about the economy building a home right now? And I said, well, emotionally, yeah, it's a little uncertain, but the economy and my belief in building the home isn't really stemmed from the uncertainty of emotion of how I feel. It comes from the rational of me believing and the believing that I'm rational, that I know how to sell and I can navigate a tumultuous economy, good, bad, or ugly, right? I've navigated an 07, 08, I navigated a 13, 14, and I've navigated a 2021, 2, 3, and 4. Kind of seen a couple things so far in my life. I don't have it all figured out, but I'm 15, 18 years in business. I've got cash reserves. I got multiple streams of income. I've got a smart team that's capable. We're very adaptable. I can sell ice to Eskimos, right? Just like a lot of you guys. And that belief is a very rational thought and approach. It wasn't an emotional decision. Oh, I believe we can afford this home, or I feel like we could afford this home one day. It's nothing like that. It was look at the data, right? You go to your banker. Funny story. Go to your banker and say, I believe I can make this work. I feel like I can make this work. They're going to go, we don't care. What's the rational say? What do the numbers say? What do the financials say? What does the forecast say? What's your cash flow statement say? What does your balance sheet look like? Let me see the last 2 years' tax returns, homie. Right? So, I don't know. It's just an interesting exercise. Maybe just a thought of the day, food for thought kind of a day. I don't have any super deep points here other than maybe a little evaluation and a little fun food for thought, seeing how are we approaching decision making. My kids right now, there's nothing rational about anything they do. I'm sure there's the rational, I got to eat, sleep, and use the potty, but they're emotionally little creatures, man. They're just flying by the seat of their pants, right? And as we grow in life and have a more stable life and a more successful life, I would probably err on the caution and err on the side of you have to have a more rational approach to life. Doesn't mean you get rid of emotions. Doesn't mean you get rid of belief. Doesn't mean you get rid of luck, right? All that kind of stuff. It just means we have to probably, most likely, at least for my life case specific, we have to be making rational decisions and have rational decision making. That went right back to what Mark Bradley was saying. Hey, how did you grow? How did you know to invest? How did you know when to pull out cash? How did you know when to do this? He goes, they were just rational decisions. It wasn't anything. It's just, what did the data say? Right? In the beginning, get the work done. Phase 2, grow as a leader, get some people. After that, you have to mature as a leader, growing $1 million plus company to what does the number say? What does the data say? And you start making more rational decisions. And by the way, you can still keep the option open to make an emotional charged purchase or emotional charged decision. But of course, you don't want to risk the biscuit. You don't want to shoot the winning racehorse by just betting on feelings or emotions exclusively, right? So anyway, just a fun thought, just some practical stuff. I told Liz, I said, hey, a couple podcast ideas, just so I want to keep it light on a Friday show. And we were spitballing about this idea once or twice recently about the marketing, the branding refresh that we're going through. And of course, I'd love to share more about that as it's coming down the pike. We'll have some, hopefully some great reveals here in the next couple weeks, couple months. But it was just an interesting conversation how we came up with all this. And I was like, man, is this an emotional decision, a rational decision? Do we really care about this? Do we really care about that? Do we really care about outcome? And that's what we're continuously trying to focus on, right? Is the outcome, the desired outcome. So that's it. That's all I got for you guys. I feel like there's a lot here. I feel like you could really dial this all in and really digest this a little bit more and really break down some different things that I think could be really helpful to a lot of people listening in. If you want to, put some weightedness on this podcast episode. But for today, just food for thought, that kind of a deal. So hopefully this was fun. Hopefully this was an encouraging word, encouraging thought for you guys today. Just some of the stuff that I'm going through real life and my wife and I are going through real life. We're real people. And this is the stuff we're thinking about real time. So, all right, guys, that's what I got for you in today's podcast episode. Hope you guys have a great rest of the day. Hope you guys have a great weekend. And we look forward to catching up with you guys here on the next episode.
Exmark mowers were born to deliver legendary reliability, signature cut quality, and stubborn durability that refuses to give in. Because, like you, Exmark mowers were built for this. And there's never been a better time to save big on Exmark mowers. So hurry into your local dealer.
Brian gets asked all the time, what hearing protection does your crew use? The answer, IsoTunes. IsoTunes are the only brand that we found that offers great hearing protection, all-day comfort, and extended battery life to get through the day. Now through the 16th of June, save 20% on their 4 most popular models using the code BRIANS20 at checkout. Treat your hearing safety seriously. Invest in some good quality hearing protection before this 20% off sale from IsoTunes ends June 16th. If you get Brian's email newsletter, check your inbox for details, and we've also provided a link in the podcast description.
Thanks for taking the time to listen to the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast with Brian Fullerton. We hope you enjoyed this production. If so, please consider leaving us a 5-star review for the show. While the techniques and ideas presented here are designed to help you grow a more successful and profitable business, no one can guarantee these results for you. We want to emphasize that entrepreneurship is not easy, and the ideas presented here are just the opinions of Brian Fullerton and his respective guests. No one can guarantee success for you. That being said, we hope the ideas presented here help you and motivate you to go on out there and crush it with your own business.
Fullerton Unfiltered Podcast.
Thanks for listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode.
This has been a Brian Fullerton and Mr. Producer production.